When Evelyn Carter arrived at the private lakeside estate for her husband Marcus's anniversary celebration, she expected an ordinary evening of polite conversations, expensive food, and another round of compliments about the brilliant executive he had supposedly become. But she never imagined that the night would end with her marriage being publicly dismantled. Marcus had recently been appointed Chief Operations Officer of Northstar Meridian, a prestigious international logistics company in Seattle, and surrounded by his influential friends, ambitious relatives, and champagne glasses, he decided to make a joke at Evelyn's expense by announcing that his greatest achievement was building a career while carrying a wife who contributes nothing. A sentence that produced uncomfortable laughter before he added, with a smug smile, "Evelyn has never understood what real success looks like." Evelyn did not argue, cry, or defend herself because the humiliation suddenly gave her something Marcus had unknowingly taken from her for years: absolute clarity. And while everyone expected her to react like a devastated wife, she calmly placed her glass on the table and asked Marcus whether he truly believed she had contributed nothing to the life they shared. Marcus laughed and told her that she had spent most of their marriage working from home, managing household errands, and playing with spreadsheets, before his mother, Lorraine, stepped forward with an envelope containing a separation agreement that had already been prepared by the family's attorney, explaining coldly that Marcus deserved a wife who could match his future rather than someone who depended on him. What none of them knew was that Evelyn had spent the previous 6 years building a company called HarborStone Systems from a tiny rented office above a bakery in Portland, where she had developed software that helped manufacturers predict shipping delays, reduce warehouse waste, and coordinate international deliveries without relying on expensive third-party systems. She had deliberately kept the company out of the public spotlight because she hated attention and believed Marcus was genuinely proud of her ambition when they first married. But as his own career accelerated, his compliments gradually became dismissive remarks, and whenever Evelyn mentioned a major contract or a difficult negotiation, Marcus would smile and tell his friends that his wife had a cute little business project. The irony was that HarborStone had recently reached a valuation of nearly $400 million after securing a major partnership with several international manufacturers. Yet Evelyn still maintained the appearance of an ordinary professional working quietly from home, because she had transferred the public leadership of the company to her trusted chief executive, Nathan Reed, while retaining controlling ownership through a carefully structured holding company. Marcus knew nothing about the arrangement because Evelyn had never considered financial secrecy a weapon against him. She simply believed that a successful marriage meant allowing both people to have private professional lives, and she had assumed that one day Marcus would be happy to discover how far she had come. Instead, the separation papers forced her to see how badly she had misunderstood him, especially when Lorraine proudly explained that the agreement would protect Marcus's career, savings, and future investments, while Evelyn would receive a modest settlement and leave the marriage quietly. Evelyn read every page while Marcus watched her from across the room, expecting her to beg for another chance. But after noticing that the agreement clearly excluded assets held independently before and outside the marriage, she signed without hesitation and told Lorraine, "You should be careful what you ask someone to sign when you have no idea what they actually own." Thought the strange confidence in her voice was simply shock, so he continued celebrating after she left the estate alone, telling his friends that the difficult part of his life was finally over and that he could now focus entirely on becoming one of the most powerful executives in the industry. Evelyn, meanwhile, drove back to her apartment in the city, called Nathan, and gave him a single instruction: "Move the board meeting forward to tomorrow morning, because there is something my husband needs to learn about the company that is about to control his entire division." The following morning, Marcus arrived at Northstar Meridian's headquarters expecting a celebration in his honor, but instead of employees congratulating him, he found security personnel waiting beside the elevators and senior managers speaking in unusually quiet voices, because an emergency corporate announcement had been scheduled before the start of business. Marcus demanded an explanation, and his assistant reluctantly handed him a notice stating that Northstar Meridian had entered a strategic acquisition agreement with HarborStone Systems, with HarborStone becoming the controlling organization responsible for restructuring several departments, including the division Marcus had just been promoted to lead. Marcus initially laughed because he assumed the announcement was some elaborate corporate misunderstanding, but his expression changed when he entered the executive conference room and saw Nathan seated beside several attorneys, financial advisors, and board members, because Nathan had spent years presenting himself publicly as HarborStone's chief executive, while everyone in the room knew that the final authority belonged to someone else. When the conference room doors opened again, Evelyn walked inside wearing a simple navy suit, carrying a leather folder beneath her arm, and Marcus stared at her as though he had suddenly encountered a stranger. He demanded to know why she was there, and Evelyn calmly placed the acquisition documents on the table before telling him, "Because the company you are standing inside is now part of mine," leaving Marcus speechless as the attorneys explained that HarborStone controlled the acquisition through its holding structure, and that Evelyn remained the principal shareholder with voting authority over the newly combined organization. Marcus tried to dismiss the revelation as revenge for the divorce, but Evelyn stopped him and explained that the acquisition had been negotiated months earlier, long before his promotion party, and that she had actually supported his appointment because she believed he had earned it through hard work. The problem, she explained, was not that he had divorced her, but that his new position required professional judgment, integrity, and respect for employees, while his conduct at the celebration had exposed an arrogance that could damage the organization if left unchecked. The board therefore suspended his executive appointment pending a formal review, and although Evelyn refused to use her ownership to personally destroy his career, she also refused to protect him from the professional consequences of his own behavior, leaving Marcus to face the painful realization that the woman he had publicly called useless was the person who had quietly approved opportunities that had helped him rise. Lorraine arrived at headquarters later that afternoon expecting to defend her son, but her confidence disappeared when she learned that the separation agreement she had proudly presented had not given Marcus any ownership of HarborStone because Evelyn had never placed the company under their shared marital assets. Lorraine insisted that Evelyn had deceived the family, yet Evelyn simply replied that she had spent years trying to build something meaningful without humiliating anyone along the way, while they had mistaken her privacy for weakness and her kindness for dependence. Months later, Evelyn moved into a new home overlooking the Columbia River and began expanding HarborStone into new markets, while Marcus eventually found another management position after taking responsibility for his mistakes and rebuilding his reputation, slowly instead of relying on the title he once believed made him important. Evelyn never celebrated his downfall, never boasted about what had happened, and never told people that she had won, because the real victory was discovering that she no longer needed someone else's approval to understand her own value, and the final lesson she carried forward was simple. Never measure a person by how loudly they announce their success, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is quietly building the future everyone else will eventually depend on. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.